What's up, investors? It's the Russian Dude. Something strange is happening inside Russia right now, and it's not the kind of thing that first appears in official briefings or carefully edited Kremlin meetings, because the real signal is much more dangerous for Vladimir Putin. People who used to defend his system, repeat his language, or live inside his political world are beginning to speak about him as a confused and increasingly vulnerable man who created a disaster and now cannot protect ordinary Russians from the consequences of his own decisions. For example, journalist Alexander Baunov recently captured this shift by saying that Putin is no longer seen as a Superman guarding ordinary people, but as someone afraid of drones and the internet. Someone who no longer projects confidence even to the ruling class. So today, I want to explain why the air in Russia feels different in the spring and summer of 2026, why public jabs at Putin are no longer as unthinkable as they were even recently, why people from completely different political niches and backgrounds are saying the same quiet part out loud, and why this may become one of the biggest political problems in Putin's 26-year system. And by the way, guys, besides our Patreon, there are other ways to support our work, if you wish to do so, obviously. You can buy our merch at the Russian Dude store, for example, such as this iconic yellow hoodie, or you can go do one-time donation through PayPal. All these links are down below. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's begin. Here's the part that surprised me the most, because this story did not begin with a famous liberal opposition leader or someone sitting safely outside of Russia, no, but with Ilya Remeslo, a former pro-Kremlin figure who once belonged to the same ecosystem that defended the regime and attacked its enemies. If you remember, we did speak about this guy previously, but there are new developments to his story. Originally on March 18th, there was an episode about Remeslo's anti-Putin manifesto, and Remeslo was not a major political celebrity. Wikipedia did not even have a proper article about him. But the reaction showed something much deeper, because thousands of people wrote that the air felt electrified, that it reminded them of 2011, and that there was suddenly more breathing space, which means Remeslo himself was not the whole event. The event was the feeling that the ice had finally shifted. Then Remeslo gave interviews to Alexander Plushev and to Mikhail Khodorkovsky's YouTube channels, which the Kremlin, by the way, treats as enemy media voice, and predicted in those interviews that in 2026 Putin, or as he called him literally, the pseudo-guarantor of the constitution, would step down as Russian president. Then he wrote on Telegram that Putin was cowardly, narrow-minded, resentful, and ridiculously predatory, and he crossed one of the most dangerous red lines in Russian public life by mentioning Putin's family, including his officially known daughters and the children associated with Alina Kabayeva. For example, in 2023, Igor Girkin's online comments about Alina Kabayeva became part of the chain of reaction of events that led to his arrest only 71 hours and 30 minutes later, especially after he wrote that the country would not survive 6 more years without Putin, at the helm. But Remeslo was not simply removed from public life after his comments. He was placed in a mental facility in what looked like an attempt to recalibrate him through the old Soviet-style punitive psychiatry. Then he came out, sat down with Ksenia Sobchak, and did a long interview and continued still his anti-Putin messaging. He may not have swung the window wide open, but he did crack it. And the opposite, and once people inside Russia see that someone can criticize Putin from inside the country and still then return to the microphone, the fear calculation begins to change completely, which leads us to the next question. If former insiders can say this, what happens when public activists start saying it in the middle of the Russian cities? Now here's where most people go wrong, because when people criticize the children of Putin's officials, propagandists and political allies, the point is not that sons and daughters should be pushed into danger as punishment for their parents. The point is that the people selling this war as sacred, patriotic, necessary and historic do not behave as if they believe their own speeches even. On May 1st, Sergei Krupinko, a Novosibirsk-based activist representing the unregistered Russian Communist Party of Internationalists, Pretty long name, stood in the middle of a city of 1.7 million people and directly challenged the big boss himself. He asked where Medvedev's son was and answered that he was building a political career with United Russia quietly. Then he asked where Kirienko's son was and said he was running VK while billions of budget rubles were being drained. Then he asked where Peskov's son was, pointing to the official claim that he allegedly served with Wagner Group. And then he asked where Solovyov's son were, where Putin's daughters were, and whether they were serving as frontline nurses, as many of the propagandists claim the women should do. Kurpenko also challenged the strange patriotic story about Maria Vorontsova, Putin's daughter, allegedly saving 4 injured combatants and being wounded while trying to save another one. A story promoted so actively by United Russia members in Yakutsk and then circulated through pro-government Telegram, VK and Odnoklassniki channels. He also questioned whether Dmitry Peskov's son really joined the active duty roster, even though Putin's spokesman said publicly that he respected his grown son's difficult decision. The issue here is just literally, if you still don't see it, it's just blatant hypocrisy. Vladimir Solovyov and other propagandists speak as if Russia is living through a new patriotic war, as if the country itself is under existential threat, and as if every sacrifice is justified by survival. But when Russia actually faced a war of survival in the past, the children of the top Soviet officials did participate in real military service, often in the air force or artillery, and some, like Nikita Khrushchev's eldest son Leonid Khrushchev, unfortunately for him, never returned from even combat. Today we see almost none of that from the families of the loudest war promoters, and even Russian society notices, obviously. The elite families appear tone deaf to Solovyov's calls, and that gap between propaganda and personal behavior becomes more humiliating with every new report of conscripts being pressured into signing Ministry of Defense contracts that could send them to places that many families fear they may never come back from. This is why Kurpenko's speech was not just a rant from a marginal activist with a long party name. It was a public attack on the central moral lie of the system, that the war is everyone's burden, when in reality ordinary families carry the whole risk while elite families remain protected and connected. And once that contradiction becomes vocal and obvious, it does not stay limited just to activists, because the next crack comes from inside the ruling party's own online world. This next part is where the old formula breaks, because for years Russian politics allowed people to blame United Russia, governors, corrupt officials or bureaucrats, while Putin himself remained above the dirt, like the one figure who could fix everything once he finally learned what was happening below him. But Vladislav Zhmylovsky, a popular political streamer called Russian Zhmil and a member of United Russia Party, by the way, he recently did completely the opposite. He posted a live stream clip titled "I'm fed up, Mr. Putin." And even though he bleeped out the roughest language, he made it extremely clear that this was not a random emotional slip, but what he really thought.
Подъехали подробности от той депутатши Яны Лантратовой, которая решила всерьез взяться за геймеров.
Например, в популярной серии той же Call of Duty есть целая миссия, в которой игрок, беря на себя роль члена ультранационалистической русской группировки, должен захватить пассажиров московского аэропорта, а потом вступить в противоборство с российскими правоохранительными органами. Или другой любимой темой западной...
Это она про миссию «Ни слова по-русски»?
Индустрии пропаганды ЛГБТ. Огромное количество игр ЛГБТ-тематики, где герои — это подростки. Есть целая премия за лучшие ЛГБТ-игры. В России есть на это запрет. Но он не затрагивает игры. В это играют наши дети. В Крокусе на платформе Steam популярного Counter-Strike появляется карта, где детям предлагают прийти в Крокус и стрелять оставшихся там детей. Вот как западный мир реагирует на теракты. Для них это не трагедия. Они из этого делают игру и потом привлекают к этому наших детей. Один из террористов в Крокусе, кстати, сказал, что научился он стрелять через компьютерные игры. И как это влияет на детей? В ТикТоке, в лайках создаются фан-клубы скулшутеров и террористов, которые начинают их жалеть и оправдывать. Нам нужно понимать, что если раньше инструментом основным пропаганды считались фильмы и сериалы, то сегодня эту роль выполняют компьютерные игры.
И аниме забыла упомянуть. О, Господи. Как же им нехуй делать в этой Госдуме, как же им там скучно. А вы помните миссию «Ни слова по-русски»? А вот, ребята, вот. Что, к чему нас это ведет? Да к тому, что... Какого хрена за стойкой стоит с такими речами не тот вот из нейровидосов заплывший жиром депутат, который все заблокировать, все, я пошел жрать там. И баба еще какая-то, уведите ее кто-нибудь. И Так, оперштаб Краснодарского края Туапсе. Как никогда близка у нас победа, ребят. Мы за ценой не постоим. Не постоим! Ой, ужас. О, кто это у нас тут?
Знаете, когда у нас все спокойно, размеренно, стабильно, нам скучно. Застой. Хочется движухи. Как только начинается движуха,
Вовремя главное.
все свистит у виска. И секунды, и пули. К сожалению, и пули сейчас свистят. Так
Да,
нам
К
страшно.
сожалению.
Ужас. Ну, ужас. Но не ужас. Все измеряется экономикой.
19 декабря 2024 года. Как ты додумался такую хуйню спи***нуть просто? Кем надо быть, чтобы такую ее спи***нуть?
The clip reacted to Putin's December 19, 2024 comments, where the president spoke as if calm, stable life makes people just bored, as if stagnation creates a craving for action, and as if danger is almost a natural result of that needed for motion. Zhemlevsky's response was, as expected, furious, because while Putin was turning national anxiety into strange philosophy, ordinary Russians were dealing with fear, economic pressure, drone alerts, and a country moving in the wrong direction. What makes this politically new is that Zhemlevsky did not say United Russia has problems while Putin remains sacred. He reversed this old formula. He argued that United Russia includes different people, even potentially, hopefully, decent people, while Putin is doing everything possible to make Russians eventually wish he had left the stage earlier. From a member of a ruling party, that's a new thing if you think about it, because it separates the party from Putin. You can see the same atmosphere in the video messages from women in Samara region, who spoke about exhaustion from Ukrainian strikes. They did not describe the Ukrainian army in the usual propaganda language as the main villain of their lives. No, they described it almost like just a force of nature, something that happens. Like a storm, like a rain, unavoidable, while directing their anger at Putin for starting this conflict and failing to provide shelters all over these years that followed.
Я прошу прощения, у меня сегодня просто уже такое возмущение прет. И все на нас, на народ. А они что должны? Они сидят там на наши деньги. Это мы их нанимаем. Я считаю, в отставку надо отправлять всех. И вот это федорище, которые вот сидят в этом доме, в белом, ни разу мы туда не попали. На народовластие должно быть в стране. И только народ может заботиться о себе, а не та кучка олигархов.
One woman even asked Putin directly how he expected people to protect themselves once he started this, why there was no shelters in 2022, why nothing changed even after 2024, after Trump said he had green-lighted missile supplies to Ukraine, and why ordinary people were being told to go into basements while the commander-in-chief remained far from the consequences. The former Kremlin loyalist Ilya Remezlov, Novosibirsk activist Sergei Krupenko, United Russia streamer Vladislav Zhemlevsky, and then these women of Samara region have almost nothing in common. And that is exactly why this trend is so dangerous for the Kremlin. When only liberals criticize Putin, the system can call just the usual opposition. But when different corners of Russian life reach the same conclusion, the regime's old defense begins to fail. And that brings us to the next layer. Because even some pro-war voices now accuse Putin of flying to the very country he claims to protect. Now here is the important part. Pro-war anger is not the same as anti-war opposition, but for Putin it can be even harder to control, because these people often share the Kremlin's symbols, speak to a patriotic audience, and operate inside the emotional territory state propaganda spent years cultivating. One example is next person, Yegor Gusenko, whose Telegram channel called 13th has about 240,000 followers at the moment of recording this video. Guzenko criticized the commander-in-chief directly, saying that Putin's claims about cell service and internet shutdowns protecting people were blatant lies, and asking why the sitting president was lying to fellow Russians with a straight face. He went even further then, saying Putin could not ensure the safety of loved ones far from the battlefield. That security agencies also were beginning to look worthless, that Putin and his underlings had been producing lies regularly, and that he personally had stopped trusting Putin long time ago. He allegedly even joined the army after fleeing house arrest. He has been on federal wanted list, and in 2024 he was arrested and mistreated by police during a trip back home before being released and redeployed. And yet, he is publicly calling out the commander-in-chief of the army he is serving with. In most countries at war, even democratic ones, direct public distrust towards the commander-in-chief from someone connected to the military would be a major scandal. But in Russia, it is just becoming a part of the normal, just everyday noise. And that tells us that the boundary of what is acceptable has already moved. The Kremlin still has plenty of speakers willing to defend Putin under any circumstances, but their defense is becoming less useful. The old excuse was always the same. Putin does not know. Putin has not been briefed. Putin was misled by corrupt officials. And if only the national leader understood what was really happening, he would immediately obviously fix it. But this now creates a pathetic image, not a powerful one, because it makes Putin look like a naive elderly man being tricked by his own very system. That is why pro-government communities have been sharing the Wikipedia article titled "If Only the Führer Knew," a phrase from Nazi Germany describing the belief that Adolf Hitler would correct abuses if only officials stopped hiding the truth from him. The comparison is heavy, of course, but the psychological mechanism is very familiar. People protect their faith in the leader by blaming everyone around him, until the act of protecting him makes him look even weaker. Victoria Boni's then video message showed the same contradiction, because she moves between pro-Putin and anti-Putin language, but the revealing part is the way she talks down to him, almost as if he lives in a separate dimension and needs ordinary life even explained to him. And then Putin himself is making those things worse, because earlier in the war his grievances about being deceived, tricked, bamboozled may have sounded threatening to supporters, as if he was going to avenge the collapse of the Soviet Union, the dissolution of Yugoslavia, invasion of Iraq, and every other humiliation he had carried out for decades. But after years of this war, those same complaints sound tired and powerless, especially when he is heard complaining to Trump about Zelensky instead of projecting confidence. This is the trap Putin built for himself. If he admits responsibility, he owns the consequences. But if his supporters keep saying he does not know what is going on, he no longer looks like the master of the system. No, why would he? He just looks trapped inside it. And that brings us to the final chapter, because even the Kremlin's once careful image machine is starting to now look sloppy. There is a twist to this that most people miss, because Putin's power has never depended only on police, propaganda, elections, or elite bargains. It has depended also on performance, on the image of the leader who is calm when others panic, informed when others are confused, and above the chaos even when that chaos comes from his own decisions. After the Kharkiv frontline collapsed and Ukraine launched a successful counteroffensive, Putin was shown inaugurating a Ferry wheel in Moscow. When Ukrainian troops occupied part of the Kursk region in August 2024, Putin's schedule looked absurdly detached, with him inspecting pear orchards, in Kabardino-Balkaria. And when the skies over Tuapse and Perm turned black from the drone-related incidents, the country's biggest boss was discussing sauerkraut, pearl barley, meat, and whether the dish should remain simmering in an oven for several hours. At the beginning of the war, this kind of calm may have reassured some people, because it suggested that the leader knew something the public did not. Now it only irritates people, because the country is dealing with a hot mess, while the president appears busy with symbolic routines, culinary trivia, and staged normality that no longer even feels normal. Even worse for Putin, he personally attached himself to one of the most hated domestic issues, which is internet restrictions. When the retirement age was raised, he could pretend that the idea just came down from Dmitry Medvedev's cabinet. During mobilization, he could present himself as granting requests from the General Staff and the Defense Ministry, It's their idea. I'm just saying that, yes, let's do it, he said. But on the internet restrictions, he has repeatedly shown personal ownership, being filmed calling on officials to tear down and stifle foreign platforms and messaging apps. That means people can connect the invasion of privacy and shutdown of online life directly to Putin himself. And even state-run polling firms like Dissent are reporting a decline in his approval rating, even if absolute numbers unfortunately remain high. Then there are small but telling signs that the people responsible for maintaining Putin's image no longer seem as careful as before. 2 months ago, for example, the Kremlin's official website uploaded an International Women's Day video that included a blooper where Putin stumbled through part of the speech. He was coughing, complained about itchy throat, said he had been talking too much recently, and asked to start all over again.
Здоровья и благополучия вам и всем вашим близким. С праздником, с Международным женским днем. Да, вы знаете, давайте-ка я еще раз скажу, потому что... Перешило, да? Давайте. Да, чуть не закашлялся. Много говорил очень сегодня. Может, принести? Нет. Давайте.
In the old Kremlin machine, this would have been edited out before anyone saw it. Another Kremlin transcript went viral because Putin was told about a teacher who joined the war and faced fascism, and Putin asked, which side was it? Whoever allowed that transcript on the official website either did not care enough to protect the boss or understood exactly how embarrassing it was and just let it pass anyways. Putin's image used to be polished by people whose job was to make every photo, quote, and video reinforce the authority, while now bloopers are slipping through the cracks and just nobody cares anymore, it seems. With the general election about 2 months away, the question is how the system will maintain the appearance of loyalty when cautious Russians enter a polling booth, draw the curtain, and tick a box on an anonymous ballot. Don't know what's happening today. Answering a state-run poster is one thing, but criticizing Putin publicly is completely another. But voting anonymously, even in a controlled system, can become a moment where quiet people express what they are still afraid to say out loud. The least cautious people are already speaking publicly and on the record from inside Russia, which does not mean that the system collapses tomorrow, but it does mean that every future crisis becomes way harder to manage. Putin's biggest problem may no longer be only Ukraine's battlefield pressure, sanctions on the Russian economy, drones over Russian regions, or even foreign leaders speaking against him, because his deeper problem is that the story he told Russia about himself is losing its magic. He was supposed to be the untouchable arbiter above the system, but now more people see him as the author of the system's failures. He was supposed to be the guarantor, but more Russians experience him as a liability. He was supposed to protect ordinary people, but ordinary people are asking why there are no shelters, why the internet is being restricted, why elite children remain safe, and why the leader talks about cabbage, while the country feels less secure. The fear of regular Russian people and elite people is not gone, unfortunately, not yet, but silence is no longer automatic. Loyalty from them is also not fully gone, but the excuses are just becoming much more humiliating. The image is not destroyed, but it is visibly damaged. And once people start seeing Putin not as a person who can solve Russia's problems, but as the person who created them and now cannot escape them, the political atmosphere changes. Because the spring and summer of 2026 does not look like normal stability anymore. It looks like the ice has finally started melting. And even though it creates a small stream of water right now, no one inside the Kremlin can be completely sure where this massive river is going next. Guys, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, because we are going to keep following these cracks inside Putin's system until the eventual collapse, which sooner or later, hopefully, will happen. Don't forget about the Patreon, the merch, therussiandude.com, PayPal donations. Thanks so much for watching. See you on Wednesday.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell, their twisted words and feeble